Okay, we're still technically in data ethics. We're looking at a problem, though, that kind of goes everywhere. I think it's most helpful to think about it as a data ethics issue fundamentally. But we're talking about sustainability, environmental sustainability. And one thing that's different here is that this is just one huge problem as opposed to one in a list of problems. That's how I normally proceed. But we're thinking about digital sustainability. We're tackling the whole thing at once. Okay, so here's our familiar 6-question framework. All right, what is the problem? Well, digital technologies are consuming natural resources at an unsustainable pace. That's not too difficult to understand. But there are two other ones. I mean, that it's just, there's not like when we talk about something bad for the environment, we can mean that. We can mean it's using resources. We can also mean it's creating unsustainable amounts of waste that we can't deal with quick enough, doesn't degrade quickly enough, and or that those technologies are contributing to climate change. So those are like the three sins against the natural environment. And I'll talk in a minute about like why it's important that we don't just combine those in our mind. We have to think about those as three distinct problems that may or may not have distinct solutions. Okay, so most technologies do that. Nearly all technologies of the last, I shouldn't say nearly all, but many, many technologies of the last 300 years since the Industrial Revolution commit these three problems. Digital technology is not any different than those, or not radically different. Okay, what's familiar about this problem? Well, when you think about technology, what is it? It's some kind of thing that's meant to address some human want or need. It's supposed to make something easier or better or more efficient to do. Okay, so when we're trying to address that want or need, especially if we're a corporation, we're thinking about what are the best and most efficient ways to build a technology that can help us address the want and need that we have in mind, okay? Very rarely at the beginning of that process do we think, hey, how is this going to impact the environment in one of those three ways that I just mentioned, right? Maybe some people do that, but in general, I don't think that there's a lot of people who design with environmental sustainability in mind, right? The focus is making sure the technology is as good as possible. And then once we have it built and deployed and people are using it and enjoying it, then we look back and think, okay, so how bad is this for the environment? So that's just the way we've done things, especially the last 300 years. And digital technologies are no exception there. The other thing is that greenwashing is really easy to do. That's a familiar thing. That's always been true. So greenwashing, if you're not familiar with the term, so green comes from the image of many things in the environment, leaves and grass and blah 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 are green. So greenwashing means we make something seem like it's good for the environment. We make it seem green, but it's actually not. That's just like a cover-up for the harm that it's doing. So greenwashing is a bad thing. It's covering up the harm that's doing by making something seem acceptable. It's not terribly difficult to do that. Digital technology only makes that easier. All right, so I want to break down greenwashing a little bit. Two aspects of it. So there's a phrase that I really like that came from this book, Cradle to Cradle. That was put out by a couple of researchers. And the phrase is less bad is no good. All right, so when something's less bad, that makes us want to cheer, right? And we say, okay, this product, it's green, right? And by green, we mean it's not as harmful for the environment. That in itself is clearly a good thing. Like, we shouldn't want that to stop. But think about what we're doing here. Okay, so if something's like harmful for the environment, you can think of it as a curve like this. So imagine this being like the line of sustainability. This would be if something's sustainable. This is if something's very harmful for the environment. So a lot of times when something's less bad, it's like this. Okay, so is it good to be less bad? Yeah. But if we sit there and cheer and act like our problem's solved and everything's great now, we're missing the fact that it was really bad before, and now it's just not quite as bad. So, yay. But, greenwashing can make it seem like, oh, okay, we solved the problem. We're green now. Another way to think about greenwashing is this. Okay, so we have our three environmental sins: use, waste, climate impact. And in the life cycle of most technologies, when they're built, you can think of different phases. So I'm just making it simple here, thinking about like the extraction phase first, when you pull like minerals or whatever out of the ground. The manufacturing stage, when it's put together, the distribution stage, when you send it off, the use stage, when people are using it, and then when they get rid of it. Okay, so if you put the three problems with the 5 steps, you get this little 15-box matrix here. And what I want to say about this is when someone says something is green, they can easily be, first of all, you have the less bad is no good problem, right? But you can easily be like thinking about one of these boxes and distracting people from thinking about the other 14. So for example, someone might say, hey, we've found a way to use less water in manufacturing when manufacturing this product. Okay, great. Manufacturing is extremely water-intensive process in most industries. But if you say, yeah, okay, we went green, we're using less water. So again, less bad is no good. But also, that's probably just addressing like one of the 14 boxes, right? You still have one of the 15 boxes. You still have to worry about the other 14 boxes. So that's another way that greenwashing is pretty easy to pull off. All right, so what's new about this problem? Well, digital technology uses more energy. Now, more is a nice four-letter English word, but it can mean two very different things. So, more, we think of like a gradual increase, like linear or gradual, slowly going up. It's using a little bit more. But the thing is that digital technologies are using way, 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 way more, mind-bogglingly more, okay? So, for example, cryptocurrency, there's some estimates that the cryptocurrency industry uses as much energy as an entire nation does, like a mid-sized nation, okay? So this isn't like it's using a little bit more. It's just like it's mind-bogglingly more. So we cover up the fact that, we say it's using more, but we need to be clear that it's using like 1 million times more energy than other processes. All right, just a couple pictures to think about. So like the data center, when we say a search with an LLM, internet search uses more energy than a Google search. Yeah, that's true, but it's like 10 times more energy. So imagine like having one of these data centers versus having 10 of them. That is a huge scale. And also, I pulled a picture from the movie The Matrix, which if you have not seen that one, it is a must-watch movie. And just to emphasize, sometimes science fiction helps us think about, future problems that we might not be thinking about now. In this part of the movie, these artificially intelligent agents are solving a giant energy problem by hooking humans up and using them as energy. That's their solution. That's a radical amount of energy requires a radically new, different source. All right, what's new because of the capabilities of digital technology? So AI specifically does something that, as far as I'm aware, no other technologies have ever done before. And that is they're able to improve and make more efficient other technologies. So they actually can improve the environmental footprint of other technologies. So I'm not sure any technology has done that before. In itself, that's good news, right? But it might lead us to ask the wrong question instead of asking, okay, well, what good can it do? It can monitor oceans and trash and this kind of thing. It's like, okay, so what good can it do? But the real question to ask is it creating more harm than good? So I just mentioned the Bitcoin example, the LLM search example. I mean, these technologies use far more energy than we ever conceived of a technology using. So essentially, that's the potential for a new kind of greenwashing, because you can say AI is so great, it's solving all these problems, it's making X and Y and Z more efficient, but yeah, is it causing more problems than it's solving? Which ethical value is relevant here? So there's different ways to talk about sustainability, and if someone wants to use autonomy or happiness or virtue as a framework, that's fine. I think the most effective framework for thinking about the environment is fairness. So essentially, when I'm throwing away, when I'm creating a climate change, essentially what I'm saying is the wants and needs of people in other parts of the world or in future generations matter less than my wants and needs, right? I want to get my wants and needs met, and I just need to use these technologies to do it. So essentially, you're elevating yourself. You're saying I'm more important than other people. So I think using the framework of fairness is probably the most effective way to think about sustainability. All right. Potential solutions. I actually do think there's some exciting things to think about in this area. We have ways to try to reduce environmental harm. Most of those ways I'm pretty pessimistic about. Things like population control. First of all, I just don't think we can do it. But second of all, then there's economic collapse concerns. There's regulations, and regulations, yeah, are good. A lot of times, sometimes they're not good actually, but sometimes they are really good and effective and cool. I support them when they are good. There's also individuals taking personal responsibility and corporations taking personal responsibility. Again, good, but that's not going to solve anything. So at this point, asking people just to not use technology or to it's not enough to meet the moment. So what we're really counting on at this point is scientific breakthroughs, new ways to use energy, to capture carbon, especially I'm thinking of using solar energy or nuclear. Those are probably the ones that seem the most promising right now. And how that can happen is if you think about the scientific method, okay? So people have to go through the scientific method when they want to make a scientific discovery, okay? So you start with your question, then you create a hypothesis, then you have to test that hypothesis and make some observations about your test, and then make a conclusion, right? And so we go through this process because we're trying to find new ways to capture carbon, to use solar, to use nuclear, and lots of other kinds of environmental questions. But if you think about those 5 steps, every one of those steps can be exponentially enhanced by AI, right? So when you test something, a lot of times it's hard to create a test, or you can't create very many tests, or it's really impossible to actually test it. But for example, if AI can create different world scenarios where this test can run, that can actually speed up the process considerably. A lot, exponentially. At this point, that's what I think is the most likely way that the environmental crisis gets solved. If it doesn't get solved that way, I'm just not sure what other ways that it does get solved. So this is the problem of digital sustainability. It's a big one, and it's one worth thinking about, and thinking about how we can all contribute to it.